So the token, and there were a lot of tokens recently popping out of all those like strange ICOs, and not only, but basically the token is the abstraction over value. And value, I mean here in a more broad way. By value, I mean, for example, bitcoins or dollars or bonds or stocks or real estate or even like some other value like memories, whatever. So tokens, they allow us to bring any value on the blockchain and represent any value inside of this like borderless, permissionless, open, decentralized system. And I think this brings us a lot of opportunities because, for example, currently, if I want to invest in Facebook, Facebook is listed on the NASDAQ, so we have centralized systems for that, but I cannot because I'm a Ukrainian citizen and I'm not an accredited investor. And if there will be a Facebook token, I will be just able to easily buy it, like I buy Bitcoin. The same with like dollar tokens. I will be easily able to transfer them without the capital control. And token on Ethereum is essentially a specific type of smart contract that adheres to a specific interface. So here is the token interface, and we'll go deeply into that. But in order to understand why is it important, let's think about an analogy. Like we have a USB on computer, and USB is able to charge and transfer data. And it's able to charge any device without even knowing what type of a device is it charging. So USB interface brings us this interoperability, and we can just operate with any device, however complicated it is. And it's the same as tokens. So token can be very complicated and implement any behavior, but as soon as it adheres to this interface, it's considered an ERC20 token, which is a standard of a token on the Ethereum network. So it has the total supply function, which just returns how many of those tokens exist. It has the balance solve, where I can query like how many tokens does Alice have. It has the usual transfer function, which I can call to transfer those tokens from Alice to Bob. And then it has some more complicated functions that are essentially very useful because we don't only want to transfer those tokens as individuals or entities, but we want to have programmable money. We want to have programmable value. We want to have smart contracts or applications to be able to transfer users' funds on users' behalf. But we cannot just allow them to do that whenever they want. That's why we have this allowance mechanism on the Ethereum token. And you can approve a spender to spend this much of your tokens. So for example, I, as a bot, approve Alice to spend 5 of my tokens, and later Alice can transfer 5 of my tokens to Lily without asking my permission anymore because I gave this permission in advance. And it's very critical for a lot of applications on Ethereum, and it's that what makes the token so useful in the real life. So when we have these tokens, and we have a lot of tokenized goods, like all those stock, bonds, fiats, whatever ICO tokens, we want to be able to exchange them, because tokens represent value, and value is not valuable unless it's liquid. So we want to have liquidity, and for liquidity we want to have exchanges. And there are basically 2 groups of exchange possibilities, exchange protocols, or whatever. There are centralized exchanges like Kraken, Coinbase, Poloniex, MTGOX. They're fast, they're cheap, they have single points of failure, they usually require KYC verification, stuff like that, and they're custodial, which is the most important. They have your funds, and when someone has your funds, he has a lot of temptation to just run away with your funds. And there are decentralized exchanges. Decentralized exchanges are open to anyone. They're non-custodial, so you transfer directly from individual A to individual B. But they're a little bit slower, depending on the implementation, and usually more expensive. But that's the price that you pay for freedom and decentralization. And decentralized exchanges have also a different approach, and there was a lot of previous work on decentralized exchanges, and people took different ways. The first and the simplest one is like, we have an EVM, EVM is Turing complete. Let's build an exchange on an EVM fully, as a smart contract, as a single program. This is how EtherDelta works, and EtherDelta is the most popular DApp, which is the centralized application currently on the Ethereum blockchain. And I think around 15% of all the gas in Ethereum is being burned in the EtherDelta smart contract, which first shows that it's useful, second shows that it's very expensive. And it's also slow because anytime you need to create an order, modify an order, cancel an order, or fill an order, you need to create an Ethereum transaction because that's the only way to interact with the system. The second approach, so Ether Delta is like an open order book. You submit an order, you're a maker of this order, someone can take this order and be the taker of this order. That's it. There are also automated market makers, which are smart contracts which have deterministic price functions for some tokens, and they try to predict this price. And then people can trade directly with those smart contracts. The smart contract is always the taker for this token, so the trade happens immediately. You don't put an order and wait. And the smart contract is just the counterparty for you. The problem is that this function is predictable, it's public on the blockchain. There's no way you can make it really random or really private because it's a public blockchain, and therefore it's gameable and front-runnable. By front-runnable, I mean that you see that someone is buying token A, which means that the price of the token A will go up, and you insert your transaction with that higher gas price before this transaction, and you basically do the arbitrage on this price change of the token A. It essentially also happens a lot on Ether Delta currently. And the third approach is state channels or Lightning networks. State channels are the fastest and cheapest approach in a way, but they have the upfront cost because you need a transaction to open the state. It's dependent on the implementation, but basically, you need a transaction to open the state channel, to close the state channel, you need the deposit, you need the users of the state channel to be online. It's separated from the other blockchain, from the blockchain itself, which means that you cannot call from the state channel to a smart contract or vice versa. It's like what happens on the state channel stays on the state channel until you close it. And they're kind of not developed yet. They're being in development. There are a lot of proof of concepts. It's a promising technology. It's very good for high frequency trading and when you make a lot of trades. But for low frequency trading and when I just want to buy some crypto, it's not that good because I need a lot of transactions. So we took the other approach. We took the off-chain order relay and on-chain settlement approach, and we decided, let's not decide how the order book is stored and how people maintain the order book. Let's just build a simple protocol, a building block for exchange, and then people will use different strategies on top of that. So 0x defines an order format, and the order it defines that token A is iterated for token B. There is this amount of token A, this amount of token B, and the order is signed, so the curve signature. So the order is just a packet of data, and you sign it off-chain with your private key without involving a transaction, and then you submit it over any media you want. And then as soon as the counterparty has this order, he or she can fulfill this order on the blockchain by plugging it into this exchange smart contract. And there were different very interesting approaches and bizarre approaches to implementing order books. So for example, right after our token launch, someone created this subreddit called Token Trade, and people were posting trades directly on the subreddit and using it as the order book. So this is kind of like the first decentralized exchange on the 0x protocol, and they had bots for verifying those trades and bots for market making. This is interesting because it shows the flexibility of the protocol, but this is not very practical. So this is the small demo of the protocol, because you can use the protocol even without an order book. If you know who you are trading with, I want to sell you 100 tokens for 2 Ether, I can just send you a signed order, and we can perform this atomic swap trustlessly, so I don't need to trust you. And we have the demo called OXOTC. It's this web app where you can generate this order, send the order hash, send it to someone, or post it on Twitter, and then the other person will be able to go and fill this order. We can do it after a presentation if we still will have time. And then there were those relayers. The relayers are people, entities, businesses which maintain the order book. And for maintaining the order book, they take fees, and this is the core part of their business. So when I want to sell some tokens to someone, I go to the relayer, I submit an order, I specify this relayer as the fee taker, and then when someone wants to buy, he goes to the relayer. So relayers are basically exchanges but they're much simpler than exchanges because they're non-custodial, they don't handle users' funds, they care much, much less about security, and they're basically just web applications which store those signed pieces of data. So this is the first relay that popped up on the 0x protocol. It's called Rudder Relay. It's currently operational on the mainnet. It's currently working and earning money. So you can go and use it as an exchange and buy some tokens on that. The presentation will be public, so you'll have all the links. There is also an interesting example called Kalifa. It was the first relay that actually appeared, and this was one guy writing it like 2 weeks, which shows how easy that is. And it's functional relay. It doesn't look good because it's like one guy, but it just shows how easy it is now to build the exchange for the tokens, because you don't need like deposits, you don't need interactions with banks, you don't need KYC, you don't need logins. You just like build this open order book. The third exchange that's currently being built is called Infinix. It is being built by Bitfinex team. Bitfinex is the third biggest Bitcoin exchange, and they had their issues, as we know, and they've learned their lessons. What are the problems with the custodial exchanges? And that's why they're building their exchange for tokens in a non-custodial way on 0x protocol. It's currently being in development. These are mock-ups, and they plan to bridge the liquidity of Bitfinex with the protocol and bring the liquidity on the protocol. And by the way, by having this like unified order format, it means that orders are interoperable and you can share them between relayers. So, for example, here was the Rudder Relay, and then before that was Kalifa, and Rudder Relay is able to just pull the orders from Kalifa and execute those orders from Kalifa. With, for example, Ether Delta or other approaches, it's not possible because their liquidity pools are separated. So if you want to improve something, create a competition, you are in a disadvantageous position because there's like this vendor locking. You need to bootstrap the liquidity and order book depth from scratch. So the good part about open protocol approach is it can be used as the building block for dApps. It's like a bunch of open source smart contracts and an open source protocol, and you can just plug it into your dApp if you need the exchange functionality. And a lot of dApps do need the exchange functionality. Those are some examples of the dApps. Like, for example, Dharma is the Y Combinator company. They're doing the peer-to-peer lending on the Ethereum blockchain, and every loan in their system is represented by a token, and those tokens can be traded, so you can have a portfolio of loans and you can do some risk balancing between them. Or Augur, which is building a prediction market, and any prediction essentially generates tokens for outcomes, and those tokens also need to be traded in order for prediction to be accurate. So all of those projects, they had different approaches before. Some of them tried to build their own decentralized exchanges. Some of them tried to like contact Poloniex and pay them a lot of money, but currently they're all building on top of 0x. Yeah, if you also want to build on top of 0x, it's a fully open source project. We have a lot of documentation. We have Wiki, which explains how the protocol works and what are different approaches, what you can build. We have 0x.js library, which is like web3.js for Ethereum, but for 0x. It allows you to integrate with the protocol. It abstracts away a lot of things from you and makes life a lot easier. And that's how, for example, Kalifa was able to build a relay in 2 weeks. And we also have the documentation for our Solidity smart contracts. Yeah, timeline and roadmap. So the project started around a year ago. And they first started with a white paper and then deployed it on Robsta and then wrote the ODC. What's interesting, in the Q3 this year, we had the token sale event, and contracts were deployed on the mainnet, so the system is fully operational and you can use it. And the plans for the future are preparing the legal framework for relayers, releasing the XJS 1.0. We're also organizing the hackathon. So recently, for example, there was this ETH Waterloo hackathon for Ethereum developers, and there were like, I think 17 building on 0x, and one guy built a trade explorer that I'll show you later, which shows all the trades happening on 0x in real time, which was quite cool. Yeah, so who we are, and we need a lot of people to pull out this roadmap and to execute it correctly. Emojis are not shown now, whatever. So this is the team. Two founders and also two other people are based in San Francisco, and the rest of the team are nomadic and we're traveling and working remotely. What do I have here? Yeah. So I can either show some demos of some of the links that I've showed before, or we can go to Q&A. How many time do I have still?
Go on.
Okay. Mm. So let's first start with 0x ODC. We probably don't have a MetaMask here installed, so yeah, it needs MetaMask, the Ethereum enabled browser to work. I can show it on my computer later. But essentially you can generate this order, like you choose the token that you're selling, you put the amount of this token, you choose the token that you're buying, you place the expiration date, and you sign the order hash. Browser is too narrow. Where's the menu? Rather relay. Rudder Relay had this educational video about how to use Rudder Relay, and they also require MetaMask. And they click here to install MetaMask. So we can watch the video which shows how Rudder Relay works. So yeah, there is some here, it's just not as loud as it should be. So you can open you first install MetaMask. MetaMask is the wallet in your browser. It allows the decentralized apps to integrate with the Ethereum blockchain without you running a full node. So it keeps your keys, but it uses the external full nodes. So it's very convenient, and you can use it to sign transactions. Yeah, so you see your portfolio, you see your tokens. You can place a limit order and buy some tokens. See the order book and the trade history. The fees that they're taking. Set the expiration date. Yeah, so one of the reasons why should we care about decentralized exchanges is because there are a lot of those tokens that don't have a lot of volume, and they will not be ever accepted by centralized exchanges. Like, for example, Augur tokens, they have a token for each prediction market, and those prediction markets are not forever, they're like for some period of time, so it's not worth it for exchanges to add those tokens for some period of time. But also, it's just good to have non-custodial exchanges. I think that might be boring. But I just wanted to show that it's like working live on the mainnet, and people are using that and earning money. It's quite good. Yeah, so thank you.
So again, we will need you here to answer questions. So first question will be mine. So you have taken, is it $23 million?
I think it's 24.
$24 million. So what type of skill set do you want for people to work either in your project or on top of your project?
What type of skills do we want from people working on our project? We want good engineers, or if people are not engineers, then we want people who are passionate about the mission, about the crypto, about the vision of the open, borderless, decentralized, tokenized world, because that's important. Otherwise, you'll just go and work for Coinbase. They probably pay more. So yeah, we want people who are passionate, and we want people who are good engineers. Also, we just want people who are a good cultural fit for us, because we're traveling together, and it's hard to spend a lot of time with people that you hate or people who are just like spoiled. From people who are building on top of us, it's different because like those teams are separated from us. So usually we know a couple of people from those teams, but not the whole teams. And for example, with the Rudder Relay, this was just ridiculous for me, but they contacted us and they were like, hey guys, we have a beta, do you want to look at that? We were like, sure, why not? And they really had working beta, and they had a team of like 10 developers working on that full time, and we didn't know about that. That's the whole beauty of the open protocol. We had the documentation that good that they didn't have a lot of questions. Yeah, so from those teams, we want them to be committed. We want them usually to be working full time. We want them to have resources to pull that out, because yeah, you can build the relayers in alpha in 2 weeks. Be kind of working, but in order to build a good relayer, you need a lot of UI, UX work, you need good web developers, you need scalability, and all that stuff that you need in the normal internet companies. And it's good because this system is highly competitive. Because before, if you were building one exchange and then someone else came out with the other exchange, it was quite hard to switch between those exchanges because you need to be verified again on the second exchange, you need to transfer your money, and they need to bootstrap liquidity. Now it's not like that. So initially there were a lot of orders on Kin Alpha, but when Rudder Relay came out, people just like immediately switched to Rudder Relay, and that's it. They started using that. Does this answer the question?
I'll ask the second question. So you are working like nomads, right? You're spending a month in Santorini and Athens. Can you tell us about your next stops?
Yeah, so we're experimenting with the nomad lifestyle. When I joined, I first spent a month in Barcelona, and then a month in San Francisco, meeting with the team and all the guys working from San Francisco, and then Cayman Islands, Santorini, and Athens. Next destination is obviously the DevCon, which is in Mexico, Cancun, at the beginning of November. It's like this biggest Ethereum conference. It's for 4 days. After that, we're going to Nicaragua, which is in Central America, and gonna spend there a month. I think it helps us to unite the team and work together without being too tired, I'll say. Like, you definitely need less PTO because I'm not saying that you're like always on vacation, you're definitely working hard, but on Friday you go out of your apartment and you are on vacation.
Next question.
What about scalability? I mean, you are on top of the Ethereum mainnet. Are you limited by its capacity?
Yes and no. Yes, every settlement requires an Ethereum transaction. It requires less transaction than fully on-chain systems because order like creation doesn't require a transaction and only the actual transfer. You can also build a Lightning network on top of that and do some settlement on the Lightning network. So when this will be ready, 0x protocol can make use of that. Or, for example, Ethereum have other scaling solutions like Plasma, sharding, proof of stake. We can make use of all of those. So we think that Ethereum has a good development team, and we know that it's a problem, but we know that they're working on that, and there are solutions being in development currently. So it's not like, oh, they will solve that. It's like, yeah, they are solving that. And yes, now we're limited by the Ethereum network, but also the 0x does not require the Ethereum, it requires the EVM blockchain. So if in future there will be some other EVM blockchain with maybe some other consensus mechanism, we will be able to easily migrate to this EVM blockchain.
Hi, Are you planning to create provisions on the protocol for conversions of fiat currency, or is that something that you, the relayers are going to do?
We think that this is out of scope for this project, and relayers are working on that. For example, Infinix have their Tether token on Ethereum that they launched a couple of weeks ago, which is tokenized dollar on Ethereum, and it's not going to be much harder for them to release tokenized euro or tokenized other currencies. But what is hard to do is to do it trustlessly, to have a tokenized dollar which can be exchanged anywhere. There are some projects also working on that. There are some projects working on stable coins. Different approaches. For example, Maker, I think, is working on a derivative-based stablecoin. But we, as a project, focus on exchange of the ERC20 tokens, maybe in future other types of tokens on other blockchains. But we try to stay focused. And for example, a lot of people are asking about the cross-chain trades. And we also think that for us it's out of scope because it's a very hard task. And there are projects like Cosmos or Polkadot working on that. And there are very smart people on those teams. And that's why we're willing to collaborate with them, but we're trying not to compete with them.
Okay, thank you very much.